I was asked by Electronics magazine to predict what was going to happen in electronic components in the next 10 years.
That's Gordon Moore, one of the founding fathers of Intel. He had a theory that we'd be able to double the amount of transistors on a computer chip every year.
So I took this doubling every year and extrapolated it 10 years from 1965 to 1975.
It became known as Moore's Law, and somehow it's tracked with reality for more than 50 years. I don't really understand how that's possible, but we can see this in our own lives. Computers are now everywhere and only getting better. Phones, laptops, vehicles, printers, everything is more powerful and more capable. Well, maybe not printers, but you get the point. Our society is obsessed with constant improvement. The new best thing you have now is technologically probably the worst it's ever going to be. But my experience with BMW's R1300 GSA has been almost perfectly mirrored by it. I live somewhere between YouTube and the real world. I have a trickle of the zeitgeist rolling into my brain every day, and that colors things. In the real world, I get to ride a ton of different bikes. I form opinions based on real experiences, and all of these things together form expectations. I try to separate from that and have this Zen Buddhist-like approach to bikes and reviewing them, but it is tough. When I rode the R1300 GS at the press launch 18 months ago, I loved the sports suspension version, and I thought the stock version was very good on the road. They changed the balance, so lifting the front wheel was harder than it used to be. That was a negative for general adventure riding. Technologically, it was a monstrous improvement. Cool manufacturing, lighter, faster, sleeker, and packed with modern features. Ideologically, I think it was maybe a small step. The experience was a little better, but we did give some things up. And that experience in the real world gave me expectations. 18 months later, I was in the garage unable to get an R1300 GSA onto its center stand. A fully grown man, 100 kilos, who has made a career out of riding motorbikes and making videos about them, couldn't do it. The bike was huge, it was hard to move around the garage, and I couldn't even get it onto the stand. My expectation was forming.
It's crunchy, bit granulated sugar, 7 out of 10. Stop it. Stop.
The reason I needed it on the stand in the garage was to prep it for this test. We have some great channel sponsors. I fit Outback Motortech protection to all our bikes. The huge winged OEM bars came off and the Outback ones went on. Frame mounted, self-supporting, neater and easier to fit. I popped a Krieger bag on the rear rack for some storage and changed the OEM road tires for some Mitas Enduro Trail Plus. It's based on the iconic E07 tread pattern, but in an updated form. It's a rounder profile, meaning it has great manners on the road, despite being a 50/50 style tire. It'll be one of the new Brake Magazine control tires for 2025. Getting that bike onto the stand was so difficult because of the electronic suspension. The GSA drops when you stop or turn the bike off to a phenomenally low seat height. I didn't know that, no one had told me that before I got it. By chance, I turned the bike on and I went for one more go before I had a tantrum and just gave up on the whole job. As I pushed the stand down, a little motor whirred into life and the bike started lifting itself. What in the Stena stairlift was going on? A week later, I was in the Algarve in southern Portugal with the bike for our winter testing program. At this point, I'd moved, loaded, unloaded, moved again, and never ridden it. I wasn't excited. It was big, it was cumbersome, and I was really unsure of it. The market and the expectation of adventure bikes has changed so much in the last 6 to 7 years. They're so close to big dirt bikes compared to 10 years ago, and the zeitgeist keeps trying to tell me that I need a CRF 300L to be able to look at a dirt track, and that I need to be more Poltares. The reality part says that's not true. This ride out of my Airbnb garage was enough to shatter that viewpoint entirely, and I'm not exaggerating when I say this. The moment I let the clutch out, I was sold. It looked so big, so ungainly, so overtly clinging onto a notion of masculinity, and yet here was a bike that was easier to ride around at 1 mile an hour than 85% of adventure bikes. I set out riding the incredible trails of the Algarve, dodging rain, smelling the beautiful countryside, and hanging out with my friend Sai and my dad on their F900 GSs. I rode that GSA for 4 days in the driving rain and I loved every second of it. The engine is exactly the same as a standard R1300 GS. It has an Akrapovic tailpipe, but that makes negligible difference. It's beautifully smooth, ridiculously rapid, and has more torque than a logging truck. You can trickle up things, you can throw power slides, and it's controllable. It's not a surprise that the GS engine is a stonker. It's been a stonker since 2012. What is a surprise is how good the rest of the bike feels. I rode the previous 1250 GS an absolute boatload. It's probably the bike I've done the most miles on in history. I taught for my dad at the BMW school from the ages of 18 until I was 32. Thousands of hours riding and teaching on a GS and a GSA. I liked the GSA, but I never loved it. It was so big that sometimes it was just a pain in the butt to use. I never liked teaching the harder courses on it. It could be done, but I'd always opt for the stock GS or the sport suspension if I could. And that is where the needle has moved with the 1300 GSA. Sure, it is still enormously big, but it rides like the R1250 standard felt. It should not. It is an enormous 269 kilograms ready to ride, and that number really undermines what I'm saying. So how do we reconcile me telling you that it's a surprisingly good bike without you accusing me of being paid for a brand chip? Firstly, like the GS always has, it carries its weight incredibly well. BMW have been doing this since the advent of the telelever design. A boxer engine with a low center of gravity, centralized mass, and a suspension system that minimizes weight transfer have some significant benefits with this. In my experience, a bike carrying its weight well mostly comes down to how it does this at slow speed, how manageable it is. I hold this in high importance for travel and adventure bikes too, and the GS does this outstandingly well. U-turns, turning around and getting your feet down are outrageously for such a big bike, but the electronic suspension is really the star of the show. The zeitgeist would have you believe that technology is bad and carburetors are good, but for me, technology implemented well is a great thing. Technology implemented badly is a bad thing. Anyone who has used Garmin Basecamp or a printer in the last 25 years will understand. The reality is that the GSA has the best implementation of electronic suspension I have ever experienced. It's ride height adjustable, doing so both automatically and at the press of a button. If you are a short rider, pop it in low. It changes the seat height dramatically, and a rider of 5'6" to 5'8" will be both feet completely flat on the ground. As a travel bike, this is remarkably helpful. My friend Jace, also known as HP2Mav on Instagram, isn't at all human. I made him ride the GS for 3 days, crossing huge rivers, and being able to make the big bike small at the push of a button made things that were previously stressful much, much easier, wild rivers included. Flip the button the other way and you're rolling on a 220mm travel adventure bike with great suspension for adventure riding. It is supple over the choppy rocks in a way that GSs have never been, but holds up in the stroke well and lets you hustle along the trail at a mile crunching pace. You're not going to win rallies on this bike, but it's also not the thing holding you back. Some of that tech has a compromise. Occasionally the bike settles to low mode unexpectedly and the telelever's front wheel is always vague when you haven't been riding one. If you swap between conventional forks and a GS, I think it takes time to get the feeling. It is there, it's just muted. If the processing power of mainstream technology is improving so consistently, it stands to reason that as long as other tech keeps up even slightly, then what was possible 10 years ago becomes easy and affordable now. In 2012, the ABS tech in BMW and KTM premium models was unheard of. It was such a leap forward. Now, budget adventure bikes come with TFT screens and similar levels of ABS and traction control. It is all compounding, and in the GS, it feels like it's peaking. The tech in the GS is such an integral part of the experience in 2025. It's something that genuinely elevates that user experience. The core bike would be pretty similar without it. You'd lose the very nice, highly adjustable electronic suspension, but still, it'd work the same. But when riding the GS, it's more like driving a luxury version of an adventure bike. The wind protection and the electronic screen are top notch. The heated seat and the heated grips are fantastic. Cold, wet days on the bike, great. The cruise control is still very easy to use. The ABS is still class leading. it feels like I'm riding the motorcycle equivalent of a luxury SUV more than ever, the BMW X5 of motorcycles, riding along, pushing buttons, making meaningful changes to the experience without ever having to stop, get the manual out, or turn the bike off. Being able to do all of this quickly, easily, and on the fly is why the technology works. It's a low friction experience. I have complained about this with Triumphs and Hondas and other bikes before. I would rather no tech than awkward tech. Now I will say that I think BMW have made one small step back here. The sweet spot of low friction was a single button for each task. That way you can learn your way around the controls really quickly. A traction control button, a heated grips button, and a mode button was dreamy. But the quantity of options now available has meant that we've had to transition to a menu system. It takes a little more learning than before, but it's still not a bad experience. One of the things I have noticed in these reviews is that a really good chunk of the comments don't wait to see what I've actually got to say on the subject, so I thought we'd play a game. If you're commenting and you made it this far in the video, sign your comment off with the word Bavaria. Best suggestion on what it should be in the next video will be included in that, but this is a little experiment to see who's actually paying attention. I like the 1300 GS, but I haven't loved it. It is objectively a great bike, but subjectively wasn't really that different. I guess my expectation was wanting a bit more of a change in what it was. In the GS Adventure, however, I think that change feels bigger. This is kind of comical joy to how good this bike is. It is more than ever a bike that you can go far and wide on, travel a long way in great comfort. From a riding perspective, it's more long way round ready than any bike Charlie and Ewan ever used. While I'm not back to backing with a stock 1300 GS, the balance of the GSA feels better. It's less on its nose, it lifts the front wheel a little easier and just feels superb to ride. In the GSA, the improvement in motorcycles is compounding. Now don't get me wrong, this will not be for everyone. It is big, it is expensive, it is complicated, and just like a Dacia Duster can do almost anything a BMW X5 can do, you do not need a GS to travel. It is not ideal at hunting single track or replicating what enduro bikes like to do, but if you want to ride the gravel roads of the world, enjoy some tarmac, cross nations, and do so in effortless comfort while touching the floor easily, it is an outrageously good and capable machine. I have been lucky enough to ride all of the big bikes at this point, the KTM 1290 Super Adventure R, the Harley, the Africa Twin, et al. And if my money was on the line or I had the money, I would have one of these in the garage in a heartbeat. I would pop to the shops on it, nip 3 hours up the road without thinking about it and crack out a 1000k ride into the bush or across Europe. Even sat here typing this script, I question the size and the weight of it. The size has some upsides. I think I'm not alone in saying that less weight would not be a bad thing. There are some unrealistic expectations floating around the internet, and BMW are clearly trying to solve this, but that doesn't mean it wouldn't be incredible if this bike was 30 kilos lighter. I've been trained by the internet to question the size, but on the ground in reality, when I ride it, those questions float away. A bike that can simultaneously be huge and comfortable, or have a seat height at 800mm and cruise the highway, rip a twisty mountain road, power slide around a gravel corner, and do it all with the poise and consistency the GS does, is basically what the adventure touring bike should be. And BMW have done such an outrageously good job, it shattered my expectations and left me wondering what the zeitgeist is on about. Maybe, just maybe, we should spend less time on the internet.